Hi, I'm Paul, and this is my YouTube channel called Timber Walkers. And this is the cooler I built out of 1-inch foam board. In this video, I'll show you step by step how I built it. I'll also post some build notes on my blog, and you'll find a link to that in the description that accompanies this video. My goal was to figure out if I could build something similar to the modern rotomolded coolers, but at a much lower cost. I originally envisioned something much larger, and I was planning to use 2-inch foam board, but I decided to build this small prototype to work out the construction details. At the end of the video, I'll let you know if I think it's an attainable goal, but for now, let's get started with the construction. I laid it out using a Sharpie. Felt like that would be the best way to mark out the pieces that I need to cut. And for the cuts, it looks like an electric jigsaw is going to work fine. I'm using a fine-tooth blade. They do make a special blade specifically for cutting foam that would be better. You can see this particular blade does generate quite a lot of particles. Good idea to probably wear a mask when cutting with this particular blade, but it does seem to work pretty well. FYI, this is my workshop. A couple of workbenches and sawhorses under a shade tree. Gonna try to make my cuts here to cut out the pieces. I've got this little setup to hopefully help me cut in a straight line. We'll see how that goes. I've got my pieces cut out. It actually went fairly smoothly. The material, of course, is a little bit fragile, so I wasn't quite as careful as I should have been, and I did get a little bit of a ding here and there, but I think it's going to work okay. So here's the basic idea. Again, it's not perfect, but I think the tolerances are acceptable for backyard workshop with minimal tools. Material for this prototype, I just bought a little 2-foot by 2-foot square of the 1-inch foam board, so I didn't have enough material for a top, which if I were going to do, I think if I were going to do something more permanent, I would want to have enough material for the top. As far as holding everything together, I'm thinking glue is going to be the way to go. I honestly don't know what the best glue is going to be. So I picked up this Gorilla Glue. It does say it can be used for foam, so we'll see how that works. One design note, I made the base large enough to go from end to end all the way around. I felt like the bottom should support the whole structure rather than having a piece that's inserted between the walls of the piece. Okay, here's my assembly plan. I'm going to install 2 of the sides using this wood block to hopefully keep things lined up, and then put the other 2 sides on, clamp it all together, and then a weight on top with a piece of plywood to, or luan actually, to try and keep everything clamped down so it will cure. And to quote the incomparable Laura Kampf, let glue dry. Now for water resistance and durability, obviously I think the surfaces of this material are going to have to be covered. So for the inside, I'm going to try using this foil tape. I've cut it into strips, and I'll be putting those strips around the inside. On the bottom, I'm thinking I'll cut a piece of Luan or very thin plywood just for some extra strength and durability, and then maybe cover it with that foil tape. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I think it actually adds quite a bit of strength to it as well, certainly some durability. I'm also going to need a gasket around the lid. Haven't figured out how I'm going to do the lid yet, but I know I'm going to need a gasket to hopefully give a good seal. Some type of rubber weather stripping material might work. Okay, I've cut two pieces of Luan plywood. The smaller one I'm going to cover with the metallic tape and put inside on the floor of the cooler. And this other piece I will place on the bottom of the cooler to add some strength and durability. So that will fit over the bottom like that. Letting the glue dry. The piece of Luan that I used on the bottom is covered with the metal tape, the foil tape, as you can see, but there's some pretty good gaps around the sides. I'm going to caulk those with some silicone sealant. I've debated about what to use to cover the outside of the cooler to give it some durability. What I'm thinking about trying is I do have this scrap piece of countertop laminate. So I'm going to see if that will work. I've got the Luan plywood glued to the bottom, and I've got my first piece of laminate glued to one of the sides. The three other pieces of laminate for the other three sides are cut and ready to go. The top is a puzzle. That's got to be the trickiest part because you need a good seal. I did not have enough foam board for the top, but I do have a piece of styrofoam that I've cut to fit just inside the square there. And then I've got a piece of laminate to go over that, coated with polyurethane. It's going to be tricky getting that styrofoam lined up with that top and getting a good seal. I did discover that my fish fillet knife was the best way to cut the styrofoam, at least as far as tools that I had. I have these pieces of wood from a piece of furniture that I disassembled because I didn't need it. And I want to use it for some trim pieces around the top edge of the cooler. And since I don't have a real shop with shop tools, having to improvise here and just using my circular saw with a guide to cut this piece in half longitudinally and see if I can make the little trim piece like I want. And here's how you make miter cuts if you don't have a miter saw. At this point, the box is covered with laminate on all sides and Luan plywood on the bottom. I've got the lid finished, nicely finished piece of Luan for the top, and then I covered that styrofoam piece with the foil tape for protection and maybe a little bit more keeping the cold in. So at this point I need to trim it up. I've got these pieces that I ripped in half for around the top edge, and then I have this corner molding for the corners and bottom. This corner molding is available in different materials. I bought the cheapest material, which is foam with some type of vinyl covering over it, and I think that will suffice for this build. At this point, I'm down to just lots of little finished details, sanding, caulking, taping, stuff like that. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because your results will vary. I will note, came up with a method for the hinge. I'm just going to use that piece of webbing and some screws to hold that on. So it's getting down to the short rows. So what's the bottom line? Well, at the end of the day, I've got a cooler that works, it looks good, and I had a ton of fun building it. I'm about $25 or $30 out of pocket, but I am a lot of hours and I had a lot of the materials on hand. If you're just looking for a functional, basic lunchbox size cooler, you'd be much better off picking up this Ozark Trail for 30 bucks or so from Walmart. It's a good cooler at a good price, and it's the one I use every day. So, from a cost standpoint, from a durability standpoint, I don't think you can beat the modern high performance coolers. You get what you pay for. But I think if you were looking for something of a custom size for a van build, a boat cooler, um, an overlanding vehicle, if you're looking for something for in a specific size, it might make sense. I do think there's probably uh, a quicker way to do it, and maybe I'll make a future video and explore that. But again, I had a ton of fun making it, and it came out looking really nice, if you ask me. Thanks for watching.